Us today. We are running a session called Ready, Study, Go, How to Become a Paraplanner. Those lovely people at Bespoke Training Solutions and Practical Financial Exams have offered to support us by running 3 presentations for us today with a question and answer at the end. So we are going to be going over to Louisa Todd of Bespoke Training Solutions first off, and she's going to help us understand what to study. So Louisa, I'll pass over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. Yeah, have I shared my screen with everybody?
Yes, I can see that.
Oh, brilliant. All right, just bear with me for a moment, because actually I've got, it's like NASA here. Yeah, at Shay Todd. I've got 2 screens, yeah, and the presentation was actually on the wrong one there. So welcome everybody, yeah, to this session. As Sean said, I'm Louisa Todd. I'm one of the directors of Bespoke Training Solutions, and I'm going to be doing 10-15 minutes really about level 4 options, what's open to you. We're going to talk about the RO exams, what the different papers are like, and some few hints and tips as we go. Okay, so we're going to start talking about 3 examining body options. So I'm going to talk to you about the Chartered Insurance Institute, also about the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments, yeah, and the London Institute of Banking and Finance. So 3 options or 3 examining bodies that you can study towards your level 4 qualification via. From there, we're going to look at the CII qualification and just talk about a couple of different options there before finally concentrating on RO1 to RO6 and a few little hints and tips. So that's my cunning plan for my 10-15 minutes. Just a little bit about Bespoke Training Solutions very quickly. Yeah, we've been in business, gosh, 18 years now. Company was started in an Italian restaurant over a glass of chilled Pinot Grigio and a Peroni from memory. We've got a huge amount of experience in supporting level 4 exams. We currently specialise in the Chartered Insurance Institute ROs, but we have trained the others as well. Now, there we go. So, one of my big messages today, and it's a real please, 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 anybody looking, yeah, especially at the RO exams, do shop around for your regulated support. There's lots and lots of different options available. BTS is one. There's lots of different providers out in the marketplace, so do have a look. We use a variety of different approaches to help candidates get through their level 4. We use a step approach and we use our own study guides. We run subsidised workshops. We have e-learning and we have an app called BTS Study Buddy. So there's so much out there to help you achieve your level 4. Right, moving on. So the examining bodies, we're going to take a quick look at 3 of them. So the CII probably has been the most well known over the years, though I have to say that's being severely challenged now by the CISI and by LIBF. Yeah, but historically it's the Chartered Insurance Institute that most paraplanners will probably have heard of first, and historically followed their route. Now, they have a couple of level 4 qualifications on offer. The most well-known one is the Diploma in Regulated Financial Planning. 6 RO units, got to pass all of them to give you 100 credits to get your DIP PFS. And that is traditionally, if a paraplanner is using the CII route, yeah, that is the qualification they would go for. There's also an older style qualification called the Diploma in Financial Planning, and that's a bit more of a mix between the JO units, which are actually used to be written, now typed exams. So it's a selection of JOs and RO units. But even the CII themselves, yeah, have pretty much moved away from that diploma and say that the regulated diploma is actually more suitable for paraplanners, financial advisors to achieve their level 4. A lot of companies out there, though again, this is changing, yeah, but historically, companies out there looking to bring level 4 qualified individuals on board, yeah, tended to use the CII route. Though, as I say, this is absolutely changing. Now, the RO units, RO1 to RO5, you can sit them every week, yeah, and if you use the remote option, yeah, it's pretty much very easy to get an exam sitting. The RO6 sittings, you can only do once a quarter, so 4 times a year. JO papers, yeah, now that's a bit of a mix at the moment because we've had some really strange scheduling because of the pandemic. They used to be, yeah, twice a year. We've now got some quarterly, but it's difficult to guide you because it has been a bit of a muddle. Now, the CII use PSI as a remote exams provider, and you've got 2 choices. You can sit your exam at home or you can travel to an exam centre. And as you'd expect, there are pros and cons on both of them. So the Chartered Insurance Institute, moving on, their level 4 qualification, the Investment Advice Diploma, and that actually consists of 3 units. So somebody sat at home might think, aye, 3 units, yeah, why am I going to do CII, yeah, when actually I can take 3 qualifications here. You've got 2 mandatory units, yeah, and both of them are historically very tricky. I've trained a few people on the regulation and professional integrity, yeah, and it's definitely a bit of a challenge. And then you've got a choice, allegedly, from 1 in 4 units, but anybody looking to give financial advice, support financial advice, your 3rd choice would have to be from either financial planning and advice or the retail advice and planning unit. So your 3rd one would need to be one of those. CISI, yeah, historically it's been more city firms, yeah, London-based firms, wealth management firms that have actually preferred that option, but currently everything is in the mix. As I've said already, yeah, I wouldn't think it's an easier option, yeah, but you have at the end of the day got 3 papers rather than 6. But I have trained a fair few people, yeah, where they've had multiple goes. Now with CISI, if you fail one of the papers 3 times, you have to apply for an exemption, I think they call it, and that takes 6 weeks. Now they've absolutely got a remote invigilation, they use Prometric, and again you've got the same 2 choices. Right, on to the London Institute of Banking and Finance, and hi to John, yeah, and hi to Richard, who I know and love from a previous company. So here we've got the Diploma for Financial Advisors, DIP-FA, made up of 3 units. Yep, Unit 1 FISRI, yep, similar to RO1. So the, yep, scintillating regulatory stuff. You've got a 2nd unit, which is based on an assignment and based around coursework. And then you've got a 3rd unit, which is based around case studies. So it's similar, yeah, to the CII's RO6 exam. The LIBF qualification, yeah, individuals that are more used to continuous study, yeah, historically they have preferred this route, but again, it is growing in popularity. And ultimately, everybody, it's all about choice. Yeah, whichever route, one of these routes you go down, you will have a level 4 qualification. Yeah, and that is the bottom line. Okay. Going back to the CII-RO papers, yeah, which is where I've probably got the most of my experience and what makes them tricky. So RO1, I'm just going to click this up and pick out a couple of key points. Who's going to get excited about financial services regulation and compliance? It's not the most scintillating. And some of the questions, my goodness, yeah, can be really, really tricky and much trickier than some of the practice materials you can study. RO2, investment and risk. Yeah, you've got another, just like RO1, 100 questions, 2 hours. And again, a tricky old paper. You've got 2 very heavily weighted learning outcomes. Learning outcome 1, which is all about different asset classes. Learning outcome 2, about different types of investments. And again, you can have some right horrid, question styles in here. And in our opinion, apologies everybody, it's actually got a little bit more difficult over the last couple of years. Moving on, RO3, personal tax. Yeah, biggest problem, time. You've got an hour to do 50 questions, and a lot of them are going to be maths based. So most candidates that struggle on this unit run out of time. That's the biggest bugbear here. So you've got to be brutal with your time management because it's so easy to run out of time. RO4, pensions and retirement planning, my favourite subject ever when it comes to financial services. So we need to find, do excuse me, we need, just going to mute myself. Apologies, for some reason my voice has been absolutely fine, until I started presenting this webinar. So we need to find the individual that coined the phrase pension simplification and give them a stern talking to, because pensions is full of different dates, of different little rules, and unfortunately for RO4 you need a little bit of knowledge about all of these different rules. So easy, absolutely not. Again, as I've already said, my favourite subject, absolutely. It is unfortunately as well the unit with the lowest pass rates, and all that work gets you a measly 10 credits, which I don't agree with. The exam experience though, candidates don't like the journey because there's so much to learn, but actually sitting the exam, they find that better than they were expecting usually. RO5, financial protection. As you'd expect, this is about different life products, different sickness products with inheritance tax and a bit of taxation thrown in. It's technically a level 3 exam. You've got 50 questions, 60 minutes, time shouldn't be an issue. And I've heard people say that RO5 is easy. Well, I sit the exams every year and I sat RO5 last December. I definitely didn't find it easy. You'll be pleased to hear I passed, but easy wouldn't have been the word that I used. And there was a lot of tax in it. Now, the last paper in the 6 diploma units is RO6, so financial planning practice, and this is where you take all your knowledge from the other units and you bring them together because it's based on 2 case studies, and it's a completely different approach to the previous 5 units because you haven't got the answers in front of you, and that takes some getting used to for a candidate. What you've got is you've got the question in the current format where you're not writing it, you're typing your answers, you've got the question and you've got a blank screen, and that's it. So you've got to interpret the question correctly, and those of you that have sat a CII exam know sometimes that's easier said than done. Good spread of answers, you've got to personalise, there's lots of techniques involved, as well as the technical knowledge to getting an RO6 pass. Ultimately, RO6 is testing your ability to apply the financial planning process. So it's based on the advice process, from fact-finding to analysing to recommending to reviewing. And that's what the questions are based around. We usually get 2 types of case studies. We get a younger case study, usually with some dependents, and then we get an older individual or a couple, that are closer or in retirement, because that way the examiner can test us with different questions around different needs because they're at different points in their lives. Now, again, word on the street is RO6 is easy. And I'm here to put it out there that actually it takes just as much, if not as much work as the other units. Some candidates or some people I've heard say just buy an analysis, learn those questions and answers. I'm not a great admirer of that. Admirer being the wrong word. I wouldn't advocate that. You could be lucky, or you could be in a deferred success situation. The regular feedback we get on RO6 is things like, nothing came up that I wasn't expecting. I thought I'd done really well. And when I got my mark, it was actually a really big shock. And could the CII, have marked somebody else's paper other than mine? So they're the 6 RO units that make up the Diploma in Regulated Financial Planning. Just a few little bits and pieces about each of them. That is me done for the time being, I think. Yep. So I am going to hand you back to Sian, and we'll move on to the next bit of this webinar.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Louisa.
Thank you, Sian.
And we'll come to you in the end if anybody has any questions. I've written a few down myself, so looking forward to picking your brains about those.
No problem.
Next up is Alex Langhorn, who also helps Louisa at Bespoke Training Solutions, and she's going to help us understand how to study. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Sian. Just bear with me a second whilst I get my screen shared. And hopefully everybody can see my first slide there. Yep, fantastic. Okay, as Sian said, I work alongside Louisa at BTS, and my role is well, it's a strange role because it's got a strange, all-encompassing title, business head of the business support team. But what that means is I work with all sorts of clients from BTS, from individuals who are going through qualifications individually, to firms, businesses, organisations who are putting their own trainees through qualifications. My background is in training and education, so I've got a postgraduate diploma in education, with a specialism in adult education and adult study. So I haven't worked with children in education, I work with adults. So my teaching qualification is very much about lifelong learning. And that's where my passion is really. I've got a real passion for working with adults who are looking to continue their education throughout their lives. I've also got a postgraduate diploma in careers education. So I've worked in university settings, offering advice on career plans and training plans for university graduates, and people doing professional qualifications in a university setting. So that's the same level really as the RO exams. It's level 4 in the main. I've worked with postgrads as well who are level 6, but in the main level 4 qualifications. My own background was an LLB in law back in 2004. And I guess you could say, looking at my own CV, that I like learning quite a bit. So that's my passion, supporting professional qualifications and lifelong learning, because I don't think we ever really stop learning. And I think that suits the work I'm doing at the moment, because a lot of people who come to BTS are career changers looking at a second career. So being able to work with adults who are doing that is really quite exciting. So what I hope to add to the webinar today is just very briefly looking at the study experience. So looking at common challenges, success stories from candidates, what works and what doesn't. Looking at some tools that I can hopefully pass on to you to help you build an effective study plan. And they're things like how to know what your examiner's looking for, how to choose the right study resources that are going to suit you, and how to make what you're learning actually stick so that it translates into an exam pass. I'm going to look at some of the challenges that come up that we deal with on a daily basis with our lovely candidates: procrastination, overcoming setbacks because it doesn't always go the way you hope it's going to be, and how to work out if you are actually exam ready, because we get a lot of people who find it difficult to book that exam. So we do a lot of promoting, go and book the exam, have a go, let's see where you're at. So how do you know if you're exam ready? What does that actually look like? So I'm just going to start off by having a look at some of the candidate experiences that we see on a daily basis, and you might feel that you can see yourself in some of these. So the challenge that a lot of people face is sometimes just getting started with a qualification. There's no getting away from it. When you order your study materials, you're going to get a huge tome. Whichever qualification route you go down, there's a lot of reading and a lot of material, and that can be really overwhelming. So getting started is one of the biggest challenges. And then most people are in that work, study, family life balancing act. Some people are, we could say, lucky enough to be full-time students, but even that in itself has its own challenges when it comes to balancing your time and how you're going to approach these qualifications. So I don't think one way is easier than the other. I think the pros and cons of whether you're doing it as a full-time student or alongside work. And I think avoiding drift and staying on track are big challenges for lots of candidates, because it's so easy with such a lot of material to study and those challenges of life and a pandemic to deal with, to stay on track, actually sit the exams and keep progressing can be really tricky. The exam experience itself can be stressful. I don't think they're meant to be anything but stressful, really. There are some strange people out there who love exams. I might be one of them, depending on the exam. But exams can be fun, but I think for most people they are pretty stressful. So if you find them stressful, that is completely normal. And the sorts of things that our candidates tell us, they find the questions in the exam to be harder, more difficult than the ones they've practiced on, or different to what they've practiced on. So that's something to be looking out for with your materials. Are they reflected in the standard that you're going to sit on the day? Because it's not uncommon to get to the exam and find these questions very different to the ones you've been working on. Louisa touched on this, deciphering the question wording. We work with the CII most closely, the CII papers, and their question wording is very tricky. Often deciphering what the question's really asking is a skill in itself. And as I said, exams are stressful. It's not uncommon for people to go to pieces partway through, especially when there's time pressure. Even those 2-hour exams, somebody can get partway through and panic and really derail themselves. So there's lots of things that make it a stressful experience. And if you look at the national pass rates, particularly for the ROs, you can see that 1 in 3 people sitting the exam will fail. And those stats don't reflect a first time sitting, they reflect all sittings. So that 1 in 3 could be a second sitting, a third sitting for some people. 1 in 3 people in that exam room are likely to fail. So they're not easy exams, and there are some reasons why we feel people fail, and the things that we do to help them overcome that and turn those fails into a passes. Some people do underestimate the work that's involved. There's no getting away from that. You embark on a qualification with all the excitement of doing it, and you underestimate what's involved. So sometimes these study paths need tweaking along the way to stay on track, especially if you're balancing things. Whereas some people do all of the work, they do all the right things, but then they fall down with their exam technique. They haven't read the question properly, they've not managed the time properly in the exam, or they've just lost focus when it's come to the actual exam sitting. So that's where training providers like BTS do a lot of work. It's not just about the technical knowledge, although that's a huge part of it. It's about the exam technique and helping an individual find the way through that plan. So is there a success formula? Well, there isn't a silver bullet that's going to get you an absolute definite exam pass. We do pretty well with our pass rates at BTS, but we think that that's based on a number of factors. It's not just about buying a study guide. It's not just about putting the work in. You need the excellent technical knowledge. There's no getting away from that. But you also need the good exam technique, as we've said. And then the trickiest part is putting those two things together and applying your excellent knowledge to whatever the paper throws at you. Because you can't just learn your answers by rote. You can't learn the book cover to cover. For RO6, you can't buy an analysis and learn all the questions, because the examiner is trying to put you in a position where you've got to apply your knowledge. That's what they're ultimately testing. So that third factor is the bit that your study plan needs to include to aim for success. So how do you do that? This is going to sound quite strange, but the syllabus, whichever qualification you're doing, that is your starting point. That's where you're going to find the clues for the types of questions the examiner is going to throw at you. No training provider can predict the questions completely on an exam paper. We can get pretty close, but they change year on year, and there's always going to be curveballs. So nobody can predict those questions, but the more you understand what the exam is trying to test, the more likely you're going to be able to tackle whatever's thrown at you. So the first thing to look at in the syllabus is the words that are being used to explain the skills you're trying to develop. The examiner doesn't want to see that you can repeat verbatim what you've read in a textbook. They want to see that you can actually apply it actively. So it's about understanding the learning outcomes, and that's where I would always start. Look at the learning outcomes and look at the words that are being used in those learning outcomes. If the learning outcome suggests that you need to know something, then absolutely you need to learn it and know it. If the learning outcome says you need to be able to apply something, then you're going to need to be able to use that knowledge in a scenario environment and apply it to something you might not have seen before. If the learning outcome says they want you to critically evaluate something, now this is going one step further. They don't just want you to repeat what you've learned, they don't just want you to apply it, but they're going to be asking you to make some value judgments, some comparisons, or to appraise the importance of that piece of information. So look at your learning outcomes, and that gives you an idea of how deep you're going to need to go with each of your areas of knowledge. And ultimately, in doing that, you're hopefully going to be able to decode, or as I like to say, defluff the questions that you're faced with, because they can be quite fluffy. There's lots of extraneous information in those questions. So to be able to strip that out and identify what learning outcome that question's testing and what you're going to need to do with it is what's going to get you the exam pass. So what all of this is saying is that your learning needs to be more than just a passive reading experience. You've got to be an active learner. So what does that actually mean? I like to always come back to this. Tell me and I'll forget it. Teach me and I might remember it, but involve me and I'll learn. Really famous quotation that you've probably heard before about how learning works. So being involved in the learning is what's going to make the difference. So what I've got here are just a couple of active learning strategies that you can deploy into your study plan that will help you make that learning a little bit more active and hopefully more likely to stick. So just because you understand something when you're reading it in the textbook doesn't necessarily mean that when faced with an exam question on that topic, you're going to be able to recall that information and actually apply it. So you've got to somehow find a way to move this information into your long-term memory stores so that you can pull it out and use it when you need it. The more active you can make your learning, the more likely you're going to be able to do it. So one thing that you can do is to ask yourself questions about what you're learning. So you've read the material, you think you understand it. Now try framing some questions, construct yourself some questions. Ask yourself, why is something that way? How does that work in this situation? Then try and relate it to a new situation. If this is the case here, what would be the case over here with these sets of situations? Constructing an answer from your knowledge. The more you can do that, the more you're actively engaging with the information and putting it into different contexts. Another thing that I love to do and makes a massive difference when I'm learning is to put things in different formats. So if you're reading a piece of text, can you turn it into a comparison table? If the material is presented as a comparison table, can you write a little script of how you would explain it to somebody? Can you turn a graph into a comparison table? Can you turn it into a diagram? Can you turn it into a scenario? So the more that you sort and organise the information that you're reading into different formats, the higher the levels of cognition in the brain, which means you're actively engaging with that material. So it also really helps you when you hit that exam paper and you see material that you should know presented in a way you've never seen it before. Okay, the more that you can see it in different formats, the more comfortable you're going to be with that and be able to tackle it in the exam. The final thing I would have a go at is sample questions. And I think most people will probably do this anyway in their study. They'll use mock exam questions, but you need to be reflecting on your attempts when you do this. Mock exam questions are gold dust, especially if they're an exam standard format. You're not going to get everything right, but that's okay. So don't hold that mock paper off until you think you know everything. They can be a really strong tool to use partway through your study to highlight where you need to put more work in. And I used this recently with somebody who was really struggling to book that exam because they just didn't feel they were there. And ultimately, the pass mark for the exam is 65%. Out of 100 questions on the paper, you can get 45 wrong. So I'm not suggesting that we ignore parts of the syllabus, but in a real world situation, if you're looking for a pass mark, there are parts of this paper that you don't need to be completely confident with. And your mock papers will help you identify which bits are worth more of your energy and which bits you can just let go for now and come back to later. So mock papers early on in your study, and then again just before you sit your exam, are really useful information about where you're up to with your learning. Okay, so I've obviously covered a lot of challenges so far, a lot of problems that people face, and what I will say is learning is not meant to be a comfortable process. That's not how the brain works. Learning is uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable and you're not sure what you're doing, you're learning. If you're not uncomfortable, you're probably beyond learning and you've mastered what you're doing. So learning is a painful process at times, and we do hit obstacles, one being procrastination. So this is something I just want to briefly touch on because I think we all suffer from it at times. And I think a lot of people approach it as it's poor time management. I'm just being a bit lazy. I just need to get my head back in the game. And I just need a revision timetable. I need to get myself organised. And we can be really harsh with ourselves and say, right, I just need to get on with it. But research is showing us recently that procrastination isn't necessarily just about time management. It's got an emotional link. And this again might sound quite fluffy and quite soft, but it's true. Having an emotional link to what you're doing can impact whether or not you're successful. And what the research suggests is that when somebody is faced with stress, which doing exams is stressful, anxiety, fear of failure, or a lack of intrinsic motivation about what they're doing, that's when procrastination rears its head. So if you are in any way stressed about the exam or just not feeling it, procrastination will come along and derail you. And what's happening there is the emotional part of the brain is taking over from your logical abilities, and it's holding court basically. And what it does is it makes us feel uncomfortable, it makes us feel worried. And your brain in the emotional state turns to a short-term mood booster to fix that. And that's what procrastination is. So kitten videos on YouTube, scrolling mindless things that don't add to your study. That's your brain saying, I'm uncomfortable here, make me feel nice, please. And we can get sucked into that loop. And ultimately what happens is that a loop develops where you then feel worse because you're not studying, and the guilt sets in again, and we procrastinate more. So what we need to do is deal with the triggers, deal with the emotional triggers, what's causing the problem. So a realistic timetable is needed. So not a massive list of all the things you've yet to do. That's just going to lead to more anxiety and more procrastination. Put a realistic schedule together that's got short-term dates and goals for you to aim towards that are achievable. Disconnect from the distractors as much as possible, because it's so easy just to pick up the phone or go on Google and have a look at something else, do a bit of shopping, look for your next holiday. Anything that you find that you go-to distractor, just disconnect from it. Once you've got your goals and your dates in your plan, reward yourself when you get there. Start counting the things you have done, not the massive list of things that you've not done, and you'll start to see some progress. And this is linked to this idea of all or nothing thinking. Okay, so all or nothing thinking will just add to your stress. This is a case of I've got to do it all or it's not good enough. I've got to get the highest mark or it's not good enough. Just start somewhere. Okay, look for improvement, not mastery, and remind yourself of the bigger picture. Why are you doing what you're doing? And that will get your intrinsic motivation back on board. So ultimately, it's about starting where you are, using what you have, doing what you can, just get going. And once you get going, that will make a massive difference. So just quickly to finish off now, I want to just introduce you to something that might be useful later on in your studies, and hopefully these slides will get shared so you've got this to use. This is the idea of reflecting on your journey. There will be setbacks along the way, but let's try and be pragmatic about those and reflect on what happened. What does that matter? What was the impact? What do I need to do? And what can I do next to improve next time? Really simple, on-the-spot reflective model that you can apply even when you're qualified. What happened? So what? Now what? I really like that one. So I just wanted to share that with you as something you can perhaps put in your study notes, and to reflect on your learning and your setbacks as you're going through your study plan is really valuable and a good habit to get into. So are you exam ready? I'm just aware of time now, so just rattle through my last slide here. You're looking for that excellent exam knowledge, technical knowledge. You're looking for strong exam technique, but you also need the right mindset. And this is a formula that's been around for decades in sales, the cash formula. And it's just checking before you sit that exam. Do I know everything? That's just one element. Is my attitude in the right place? Do I have the skills to answer the questions I've not seen before? And do I have good habits in place to put those into action? And that's me done. Whistle-stop tour of some study techniques. I hope you found them useful. And if you've got any questions, please save them to the end. I'm going to pass over now back to Sean, who thinks moving on to Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. That's really, really useful. And again, I've written down a few questions that I'm going to save to the end for you as well. But that was really helpful. We can tell you know your stuff. Next is Michael Pashley. So Michael is the guy behind Practical Financial Exams, and he's going to help us understand how to put everything that we've learned in practice.
Okay, Sean, I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me, everyone. And here we go. So first and foremost, I will say, Alex, I thought that was a really, really good presentation. I really liked the procrastination bit at the end. I thought that was really insightful. So thank you very much for sharing that. Folks, thanks very much for staying on to join me for this short presentation on SMART objectives. I'm certainly not going to be able to cover it, how to put everything into practice in the next 15-20 minutes, but I will be looking at SMART objectives for paraplanners, which is a way that you can put some of what you learn in your diploma into practice in real life. And then I'll be finishing off with how advanced qualifications can help you once you have achieved your level 4 diploma. My name is Michael Pashley. I am the Managing Director of an organisation called Practical Financial Exams Limited. Practical Financial Exams is an examining body, so similar to the LIBF or CII. However, we don't provide a level 4 diploma. We provide advanced qualifications. So once you've got your diploma, it's kind of like, what do you do next? The agenda for today's short session is we're going to be covering defining and recording SMART objectives, assessing achievability of SMART objectives, and SMART objectives and suitability reports. So I've come at this from very much a paraplanner focused perspective. And you might be thinking, what, Michael, why are you talking so much about objectives? Well, in my professional life, I've done a lot of file checks and reviewing files. And one of the reasons that a lot of files fail is because there's a lack of coherent objectives. And that's often something to do with it being the advisor's fault. There's no doubt about that. So for all the paraplanners here, it's probably not your fault, but it's really important that as a paraplanner, you've got the confidence to understand exactly what you need in terms of SMART objectives in order to then go and produce the report, do the research and do everything that you need to do in order to come out with a compliant file. And that may involve, unfortunately, challenging the advisor in some cases when they come back with a one-word objective. And believe me, it does happen. So the golden rule for financial planning, particularly investment planning, is that investment is not the objective itself. Investment is merely the tool that we use to achieve the financial objectives. It's not the objective itself. And sometimes there are clients that come into a fact find with an advisor and they say, my objective is to invest my money. And what then needs to happen is the advisor shouldn't then say, oh, right, great. They should say, OK, why do you want to invest? And then come up with a more SMART objective. We'll look at what a SMART objective is over the next couple of slides. But a client coming into a financial advisor's office and telling them that their objective is to invest their money is a little bit like going into a travel agent and saying that your objective is that you want to get on a Boeing 747. It's not quite how it works. The objective is that you want to chill out for 2 weeks on Thai beach and relax and enjoy, developing time with your family or whoever it is that's joining you on that Thai beach. But it may well be that you don't need to get on a Boeing 747 to get there. It may well be that you need, as the graphics down below helpfully explain, you might be better off driving, you might be better off taking a boat, you might be better off getting on the bus. It just depends what your particular situation is. The key point here is that investment is the tool that we use to achieve objectives. It is not and never will be the objective in itself. Now, when you're developing a SMART objective, what the financial advisor should ideally be doing, but they don't do, but they should ideally be doing, is going through SMART objectives with the clients. The way that I teach this to financial advisors is that you've got a blank bit of paper and you write out SMART down the left side of the paper, and then you ask the client, what is your S, what is your M, what is your A, what is your R, what is your T? Now, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So the specific part of the objective, you need to get the qualitative, not the quantitative, the qualitative part of the objective down. And the qualitative part of the objective is not measurable. It's just what you want. So if this was a retirement objective, you want to know what time the customer gets up in the morning, what time they're planning to go to bed at night throughout their retirement, and what they do in between those times. Do they go and see the kids? Do they go and build model trains in the attic like Rod Stewart? What do they do? M, measurable. How much are they going to need? What's the quantitative part of the objective? Achievable and relevant. Now, these parts are for the advisor to determine. So achievability is typically determined via things like cash flow modeling and cash flow mathematics. and maybe done back at the office. And if the objective is, it just seems like a pipe dream, then the financial advisor should go back to the client and explain that this is a pipe dream. We need to adjust the M or the S for your objective. It might well be that you can't afford to go to the Thai beach. You may have to do with Butlins. In terms of relevancy, a client telling an advisor that they want to spend their £100,000 DC pension on a camper van to go travelling around Cornwall in their retirement, when that is the only money they have in the world, they don't have any state pension, that's probably not a relevant objective. The key point is here with relevant is it's needs before wants and wishes, and time bound. So when do you want to retire? What's your time horizon? Now, I've covered one way of doing this with the advisor, sitting the client down and saying SMART. But however you get the objective, whatever technique you use, an objective is not a one-liner. An objective is a much more in-depth thing, and this is what in 2021 we should be providing our paraplanners with, even though we often don't. In terms of investment objectives, often when you challenge advisors with this, they'll say, "Oh, but the client doesn't know what they want to do," and that's fine. If the answer is "I don't know," then it's "I don't know." However, however complicated an investment objective is, there's only actually 4 of them when you break them down, and you can actually test this out. Go into TrustNet, pick your favorite fund, and then go through all the waffly bollocks that's actually in the little description of the fund's aim or objective, and you will find it is either going to be capital preservation, capital growth, current income, or total return. Cap preservation. This is where the client says, "Oh, I don't really know what I want to do, but I'm worried about inflation. Don't want to lose. I don't want the capital to lose value over time. I still want it to buy me 100 grand's worth of stuff in the future." Okay, easy to understand. Capital growth. That is growth in excess of inflation. Current income, to provide an income. So, for example, for a discounted gift trust or a drawdown, and then total return, which is a mix of growth and income. And I swear to you, if you go onto TrustNet, go and check out some of these fund fact sheets, and you will see that when you actually cut through the waffle, it's one of these 4. Okay, hedge funds, you might get a couple of extras, such as the objective is to hedge the market and things like that. But when we're talking about retail client funds, these are the 4. And when we're assessing achievability, the way that I tend to do this is I tend to use deterministic modeling with Microsoft Excel, but it depends what your own personal preference is. If you use Voyant or Cash Calc, that's fine. If you prefer to use a stochastic modeling, that's fine. Absolutely up to you. But one way to assess achievability is to use cash flow modeling. I've done this very, very simply on this slide, just for the sake of easiness. We've got here a simple chart down the x-axis at the bottom. We've got the number of years. Up the y-axis, we've got the value of the portfolio. The orange line is the value of our portfolio, and the blue line is the value of our objective. So what we've got here is we've got £225,000. We pay our financial advisor a £5,000 initial fee. So we're starting with £220,000. The objective was to beat inflation, just a cap preservation objective. So if you look at that far column there, the investment starts at 220 and then it goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up, ending with 310,000. So and the inflation, this is the objective. Top of my head, I can't remember the assumptions that I used. I think it's a 4%, but I could be wrong. At least it shows in theory that this is achievable. This wouldn't be your final end of cash flow model. This was purely a quick assessment of achievability. What needs to be in a suitability report? Now, when I ask people this, they often can't tell me. They often say things like charges and stuff like that. But there's only actually 3 things that need to be in most suitability reports, and 4 if you're including a life policy. The 3 things that you need is the client's objectives, which is that number 1. Number 2, they need to provide the reasons why, and number 3 is any possible disadvantages. And again, in the case of a life policy, you need a personalized recommendation explaining why a particular life policy would best meet the client's demands and needs, why Prudential's bond over LV's bond. But specifically here, it's specify on the basis of the information obtained from the client the client's demands and needs. That's not, oh well, I asked the client what they said that they wanted, and I reworded it completely, so it's not even recognizable anymore. That it runs the risk of being non-compliant advice. The objective should be in the client's own words, using their own phraseology, and the FCA has been relatively clear on this. It specifically says in quotes, specify on the basis of information obtained by the client's demands and needs. Now, when you're writing your suitability report as a paraplanner, this is one of the main reasons why I just love it. Love marking down people's assessment papers. No, I'm only joking. But seriously, it is something that we see a lot in real life, and also when we're marking assessment papers. We often see reasons why that are not actually reasons why. We see reasons why that are just generic facts. So let's take a look at this first reason why up here. So you have a £20,000 ISA allowance for the 2020-2021 tax year, and the maximum amount you can contribute to an ISA in this tax year. Now, often that's where a lot of reasons why stop for an ISA recommendation. Then we go on to the next bullet point. So ISAs are extremely tax efficient. Any income or gains generated within the ISA wrapper is exempt from income tax and capital gains tax. Now, so far, absolutely everything that we've said, those two bullet points up until where it says capital gains tax, that's not a reason why. That is simply a generic fact that anyone could have looked up. The reason why bit is the second clause of that second bullet point, helping you to achieve your capital growth objective more efficiently, with more income and gains remaining in your portfolio and less being paid out in tax. As we go on, due to the limit on ISA contributions for 2020-21, you need a home for money that can't fit into it. So one tax efficient option for you, given your personal circumstances, is a GIA. All the funds that have been recommended to you pay income as dividends. So you have a £2,000 dividend allowance, and that means that the first £2,000 of dividends you will receive in your GIA for 2020-21 will be taxed at 0%. So again, those first two bullet points, that's where a lot of reasons why stop, just providing the generic facts. What we want to see is that we want to see the evaluation. I think, was it Alex that had mentioned critical evaluation? That's what we want to see in real life suitability reports. Historically, the dividend yield on your recommended funds has been no more than 2%. 2% of 100,000 is 2,000, which means that the amount of the investment into the GIA is low enough that you may not have to pay income tax on the income produced, helping you to meet your capital growth objective more tax efficiently. So when we're writing reasons why, what we're doing is we're linking back the generic fact that would be the answer in, say, a CII exam directly to the client's situation. And that is critical evaluation in a nutshell. Now, if you want some assistance, or if you want to further your education following on from your level 4 diploma, we do consider that you should have a think about taking our SCQF level 9 practical investment planning exam. It is 15 credits from the Chartered Insurance Institute, and it is 25% of the units that you need in order to achieve your LIBF advanced diploma. So it is an eligible specialist unit for your LIBF advanced diploma, and I feel absolutely delighted to say that, even with John watching me. So yes, it will go towards your chartered status with the LIBF or CII. It provides comprehensive learning support and practical, pragmatic, relevant assessments. So there's no written exams. You don't have to worry about multiple choice and getting stressed out. We ask you to do a suitability report, which you should be able to do standing on your head if you're a paraplanner. And we ask you to put together a small portfolio of work-based evidence. Now, don't worry. I think I've spoken to a couple of people before, and paraplanners worried about role plays and things like that. Now, you can role play if you want, but there are other ways to achieve the learning outcomes that you can put into your portfolio, so you don't have to worry about role playing if that's really not your thing. And finally, that is underscored with a Zoom or Teams discussion with one of our assessors. So there's three official assessments there that you need to pass, but once you do, should be a great way to enhance your learning, to enhance your own professional development. And it tests the key paraplanning skills and builds empathy with the advisor role. So it will give you as paraplanners more insight into the challenges that advisors face in those fact find and presentation meetings. So when they come back from the meeting with the single word objective, you'll be a little bit more confident in how to challenge that. And that's me. Feel free to contact me on the telephone number or email address there. Feel free to explore our website where we've got some fantastic news and insights. And it'll be great to see you on one of our qualification cohorts very soon.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's really useful, and it probably leads on to one of the other subjects that we're going to be covering off in a future event, which is about building relationships with your financial planners and being able to have the confidence to challenge them, because it's a key part of paraplanning, alongside all of the technical things that we learn through our exams and putting it in practice as well. So thank you very much, Michael. I'm going to open the floor now to any questions. I know there's been a bit of chat going on as well. If anyone wants to chip in with any of their questions that they might have, feel free to come on video or feel free to put it in the chat. You can just unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, whether that's on video or you can just use audio. But I'll just open the floor for a minute or two just to see if anybody's got any questions.
Hi, Sean. I've sorry, can't speak. I've got a question. I think probably best for Louisa.
Hello.
So, hello. I've heard it said before, and I didn't really believe at the time, but the CI exams, especially the ROs, are often best sat by people who don't really have any experience in the industry because of the way the CI sort of write the questions, and that you can get caught up in trying to project your experiences onto it. Do you think there's anything to that for sort of new entrants to the paraplanning industry?
That's a fantastic question. I think it swings and roundabouts. I think if you've got no experience, then you are a blank slate and you can literally take the learning, absorb it and just apply it. But you don't, and I don't mean this rudely, anybody, you've got no common sense. Whereas somebody that's got some experience, they might not be that blank slate, but they can look at a question and think, well, it's definitely not that, and it's definitely not that. Yeah, so it really is swings and roundabouts. I think probably the exam where having some experience can be a bit of a disadvantage is RO6, because you can write the answers to the questions about the advice process how you would in real life, and actually that's not what the examiner is necessarily after. They're obviously going to be after the CII's version of what real life is. So it's my favourite trainer answer. It really swings and roundabouts. Yeah, there's advantages for having no experience, and actually there are advantages for having some. I hope that helps a bit.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was thinking, to be fair.
Yeah, it definitely is swings and roundabouts.
Thank you.
In the chat, Andy raised a question, which is, so this is probably, maybe Alex, maybe this is coming to you, about how to remember things that might have been read in study books. And somebody once gave me quite a good tip about how to remember certain things that you're never going to remember. For me, it's like the lifetime allowance protections and what's involved, the numbers involved in all of those. I have to write them out and memorize them. But there was a particular way that somebody taught me once, which was about, thinking about a journey that you go on every day and thinking about the signposts or things that you see on the way and remembering each point as one of those things. Do you have any good sort of tips like that you might that you can share? Good tools?
Yeah, just briefly, I think what's going on there when you read a page like that is something that's called cognitive overload. It's not that you're not clever enough. It's not that you can't do it. Sometimes the text you're reading has got far too much in it, and it is just overload, and the human brain can't cope with it. So it's finding ways, like as you just said there, Sean, finding ways to make that information relevant to you or breaking it down. And that's what we try and do in our study guides, is to use graphics. So if you can put yourself a graphic together or use a mnemonic to help you remember the key points, break it down into what are the fundamental pieces of the information you're trying to read here, and give it some key headings. And then you can use things like memory palaces to if something really won't stick, give that journey through something. I remember learning the digestive system with my dad when I was little by putting the stomach in the sink in the bathroom and things like that. So there are funny little ways you can remember it, but ultimately what's going on there is that material staying in your short-term memory and it's not moving into the long-term memory. To process it, it's got to become relevant to you. So find a way to make it relevant, find a way to apply it to something. I don't know if that helps. Who was it that asked the question there? Sorry, was it Andy? Does that help, Andy?
We've had a couple of questions, and this was on my list as well, about the way to get started, and this really applies to probably career changes, which you referenced, Alex. We get a lot of career changes coming into the Paraplanner Club for menteeship. So have you got any specific tips for people that are career changing? Because I personally can't imagine trying to go through this diploma and any of this study without having real life practical experience at the same time as doing the exams, because they're tough enough on their own.
Who's that one going to? Is that coming to me or Louisa? Who wants to take that one?
Alex, if you've got anything, if you've got anything to add on that one, that'd be great.
Yeah, career changing is challenging because you're not in the environment, and often you're studying, especially in the pandemic, in a vacuum at home. So I think it's about reaching out and forming your own networks. There's lots of great networks online at the moment. Obviously, Michael is involved with FAM, finding other people who are also studying, people who are in the profession willing to give their time, and there are more people than you think who are doing that at the moment. The online community has been great over the pandemic for groups like FAM forming. So I'd look for those on LinkedIn and join groups. Find ways that you can join online training and become part of a study group there. Because I think the more people that you can have on the journey with you, the better. The Paraplanner Club obviously is doing a great job as well with that. So get involved in those groups. You're already here doing this, which is great, but reach out to others who are doing the journey, on the journey with you, and find people who are in the sector. There's more people out there than you think, I think, online. Would you add anything, Louisa, to that for people?
No, I absolutely, yeah, because you don't feel on your own. Yeah, you've got people you can reach out to, you've got people you can ask questions to, and actually you realise that it isn't just you, that actually there are other people within your community that are going through exactly the same struggles. Yeah, so I 100% agree, Alex.
And we haven't set up any formal study groups or anything like that with the Paraplanner Club, because we try and stay away from the technicalities, and we know that that's what will be involved when it comes to study groups. But you're quite welcome to use, we've got a private LinkedIn group for the Paraplanner Club. If you want to find study buddies on there, just put a post on there and you'll soon find it. It's kept private, obviously for that reason. We monitor the membership of the group to make sure that they are relevant people within the group, and yeah, that's what I would suggest. Certainly myself and Chloe are both going through the CFP with the CISI at the minute, and I don't think either of us would even think about contemplating it without having study buddies or a study group, and we've very much got that in place. And both with having young families, it's certainly you need probably more direction than you otherwise would do, and that really, I find, certainly helps. I think we've run out of time. We've got lots of chat and questions going on within the chat. I'd say if you can direct those to the LinkedIn group on there, I know we'll certainly be around to answer questions, as will I'm sure other people that are on the call as well. I just wanted to say thank you to Louisa, Alex and Michael again for your time. It's been really great and really useful for myself and all of us, and I'm sure many people will watch this as well going forward. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending. Hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, bye.